talk, but she helps prosecute. And that is what's incredibly important. She makes sure that people are held accountable, that this administration is held accountable. Under her watch, she made sure that they actually removed the citizenship question, because again, they're trying to demonize and they're trying to make sure that we do not have political power. She has talked about racism from the moment he went down his escalator, and she always speaks truth. Please join me in welcoming NAACP Legal Defense Fund President and CEO, Sheldon Geifel. Thank you.
I cannot tell you what it means to me to see you all out here today, because we have to remember who we are. The signs that say be on the right side of history, be on the right side of history. We should remember that nothing that we believe in this country, the ideals that we hold most high, none of them were realized without a fight. None of them were realized without people coming together who believe in justice, who believe in truth, who believe in equality, and demanding it. Today is the anniversary of the passage of the Voting Rights Act. We represented those marchers who were beaten on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. We represented those in the campaign who risked their lives to fight for American democracy. And today, we are in the fight of our lives for this democracy. We are in the fight of our lives because there really is no one but us. Because the highest official in the land, the President of the United States, from his mouth speaks the words of white supremacy, speaks the words of racism, gives license to behavior and to acts that were deemed unacceptable years ago. He has removed the velvet rope from hate, and it is pouring out into the streets. But it is not just the president, and that's what I want us to remember today. President Trump did not create white supremacy or racism in this country. He has licensed it, he incites it, he encourages it, but he did not create it. The organizations who are speaking today existed long before Trump was president, because we already faced a problem of racism and marginalization and disaffection and voter suppression. We already faced the problem of Mitch McConnell refusing to do his job as Senate Majority Leader, blocking Merrick Garland from a hearing to sit on the United States Supreme Court. We already faced domestic terrorism by white supremacists. Charleston happened, the massacre at Emanuel AME, when Obama was president. So this already existed in our country. But right now, enough is enough. 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 Now, it's not enough for us to come and stand together. It's critical that we see each other and that we hold our signs, but I'm always here to give you action items of what you must do. We know what must happen. If you are trying to change the mind of President Trump, you are on a fool's errand. We don't have time for that. This is who he has been. So we have to use the avenues that we have towards other areas of power. The United States Senate has to do its job. I don't want to hear we don't have the votes. We didn't have the votes in 1964 for the Voting Rights Act. We never have the votes. I don't want to hear it. We make the votes.
That's right.
By the pressure that we bring to bear.
That's it.
And so it's time for that pressure. It's August. Our representatives are back home in their districts, and you need to show up at their offices. You need to call your family, your friends, your networks. They need to be showing up at district offices. They need to be showing up at town halls. You need to call them 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121. You're telling me you can't wake up every morning and pick up the phone and make a call and leave a message about what you want? You do it. Do it. Tell your neighbors and your family to do it. You're calling your representative. You're calling your senator, and you're telling them what you want. What do you want? What you want, first of all, is you want gun legislation. Common sense gun legislation. The majority of the country is on our side.
That's it.
There are a few who are blocking our voice. That is not democracy. That is actually what the founders feared. And so we have to make our voice heard. Tell them that we demand that Mitch McConnell get out of the way. If he doesn't want to lead the Senate, then he needs to get out of the way and allow these bills to move forward. Number one. Number two, the way we exercise our power in a peaceful way is through our vote. And that means that that's the second thing that we need. This Senate Majority Leader has blocked legislation that would protect our elections. Let me tell you, today's the anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. Do you think that John Lewis had his head beaten in on the Edmund Pettus Bridge? Do you think that Fannie Lou Hamer was beaten in that jail in Winona, Mississippi? Do you think that Jimmy Lee Jackson was killed in Marion, Alabama, so that we could allow the Russians and other foreign elements to steal our vote from us?
No!
So we need Mitch McConnell once again to get out of the way and let these bills that have bipartisan support to protect our elections from foreign interference, allow them to vote on the floor of the Senate. There is no point fighting for the right to vote if we're going to allow foreign powers to take it from us. That's the second thing that we're asking for. The third thing, we have something called the Department of Justice in the United States.
Injustice.
We have a Department of Justice. It contains within it a civil rights division that is empowered to enforce the civil rights laws of the nation. This woman, Vanita Gupta, used to lead that department when that department had integrity, when that department was committed to the enforcement of the nation's civil rights laws. That is our department. They get paid by us. We are taxpayers. And we have the right to demand that the Attorney General, Bill Barr, reveal and tell us what is his plan. What's the plan we want from him? We want a plan to investigate, infiltrate where necessary, and prosecute white supremacist violent organizations.
Hell yeah!
They'll do it in a minute for any other kind of organization, but they won't do it for these, and we need that. We have oversight committees in the House and the Senate that must bring those people to sit at the table and explain what their plan is to protect us, because El Paso cannot happen again.
No!
So those are three action items that you have. You are calling your representatives and your senators, and you are telling them what? What? What are you telling them? You forgot already.
Gun legislation!
We need gun legislation. We need McConnell to let those bills come to the floor. We need legislation to protect our elections from Russian and other foreign interference.
Chuck Schumer needs to be tough.
We need the Attorney General to articulate a plan to deal with white supremacist violence to protect the people in this country. And we demand it. And we demand it. And we demand it. Last thing, do not forget your local officials. Do not forget those who sit in the state houses. Do not forget your governor. Do not forget your mayor. They also have power. They have power to pass gun legislation in your state. And so we also have to press our local leaders. This is the moment to press them. This is the moment to show up at the town halls. This is the moment to make the calls. This is the moment to fight for your democracy. You want to be on the right side of history. Do not front to your grandchildren and tell them a story about what you did in this period. Be able to tell them that you really leaned in. You did everything you could, because we are on the precipice. Ask yourself, if you lived in Europe and it was 1937 and you thought there was something you could do to avert what happened, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Then I'm demanding that you do it now.
Shut it down!
We will be there. We will be there. We will be there in the courts fighting for civil rights every day. That's what our staff does.
Oh, yeah.
We are there. I want to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelley, for those incredibly impactful words. I want everyone to take note that the incoming second grade class is the first majority minority generation in this country.
Yeah!
And what we need to build them is a future of love, of acceptance, and possibility. And that means that we need to ensure that they are safe in their classroom. My daughter, when she entered preschool, she had to duck and tuck and shelter because they were doing a drill in her elementary school, her preschool, against gun violence. That's nonsense. That should anger every single individual in this country. And it's because of the leadership of Chris Brown with the Brady campaign that we have been able, doggedly, year after year, making sure that we are not standing by. It is because of the legislation that passed in Congress, because of the diverse Congress, that we actually passed comprehensive background checks and a litany of other legislation. But it was because Americans came together, and Chris, because of your leadership, thank you so much for what you have been doing.
Thank you so much, Maria Teresa. It's an incredible honor to be here with such a diverse group representing what America actually makes America great. Last I heard, there's a fundamental saying we have here in America. It's related to something our founding fathers thought was really important, fundamental to our democracy. It's e pluribus unum.
Yeah!
Out of many, one. Our diversity is what makes us great. He should get the memo.
That's right.
And ultimately, the issue that we face with all of the coverage from the horrific events over the last weekend is one message is loud and clear. It is about the hate and the hateful rhetoric emanating from the White House. And it's also about our lax gun laws. We are arming hate in this country. And the president takes to the airwaves yesterday, and he says it's about video games. Last I checked, there was a global market for video games. Make no mistake, we have an epidemic of gun violence in this country. We have 100 people every single day dying on the streets of America. That's the equivalent of a regional jet falling from the sky every single day. We have lost more.
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
Yeah!
Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. And ultimately, we have to understand that we have an undeclared war on American soil. We have lost more Americans to gun violence since 1970 than we have lost soldiers in all of America's wars combined.
Shame.
Just let that sink in for a minute. You know what's more tragic? We have the answers. They are sitting right before us. What are they? Well, go ask Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic majority that just passed 2 of the bills that will actually save lives that are sitting on Moscow Mitch's desk.
Yeah!
That is the bill to expand the Brady background check system because, guys, 1 in 5 guns sold today is sold with no background check. We have weapons of war on our streets. Guys, we're the only industrialized country in the world where you can go in, you can buy an assault-style weapon, and you can buy a magazine that carries 100 or more rounds, and you can get that for about $200.
Shame!
That's what happened in Dayton. That's what we saw happen in El Paso. And why is that? because they're designed to kill as many people as humanly possible, as quickly as possible. They're designed for the military. They're designed for combat. They can't be used to hunt because it's unfair to the animal. We are using it to hunt, to arm hate and hunt our own people. We have to pass a new assault weapons ban. We have to restrict high-capacity magazines, and all of us need to remember that this is on us. Right. Ultimately, what he wants to do, what Mitch McConnell wants to do, is have apathy win. We cannot let that happen. And I know we won't, because in 2018, a huge number of you registered to vote and got all of your friends and your communities to register. That is how we elected the first gun violence prevention majority in the House of Representatives in a generation. So what I want everyone to do is text emergency to 877-877. That's emergency to 877-877. You will be put through to Moscow Mitch's office. You demand that he bring the Senate back in and help me make sure that if they don't vote on these life-saving measures, they are looking for different jobs in 2020.
Close the gun show loophole!
Thank you. Let's be clear. This president descended down the escalator and he made this about who we were as American. He criminalized the whole people. But it wasn't just the rhetoric, it was his policies. And what I found so beautiful was at the moment that he tried to signal out Muslim Americans, we flooded airports and said, not on our watch. It's not just rhetoric, it's policy, racist policy. And I welcome today, locked in arms, Veronica, Executive Director of the Muslim Advocates, for all the work that you've been doing. Hello!
My name is Rahana Karen. I'm the Executive Director of Muslim Advocates, a national civil rights organization dedicated to working in the courts, in the halls of power, and in our communities to stop bigotry in its tracks.
Yes.
Now, some of you may not know this, but the Latino community is the fastest growing segment of the American Muslim community.
Woo!
The Latino community is us, and we are them.
Yeah!
And today, more than ever, Muslims across this country are standing in solidarity with our Latino brothers and sisters.
Yeah!
We are here today because our hearts demand it. But we're also here today because the violence perpetrated by white nationalists and white supremacists has been tolerated for far too long.
No more!
Almost 5 months ago, 51 Muslims were massacred by a white nationalist in 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. And what words were used by that attacker? He called Muslims invaders. Just a couple of days ago, when another cold-blooded murderer killed 22 of our fellow Americans in El Paso, what word did he use to describe our brothers and sisters? It is the same exact words. Now, is this just a coincidence? No. It's not. We know where these words come from. It is our president, shamefully, along with his aides and surrogates, who have regularly called immigrants invaders. His tweets, his campaign ads, and his friends on Fox News can't seem to say it enough. His campaign has even run more than 2,000 ads on Facebook, calling immigrants invaders, or calling this an invasion. But what does the president do? He blames video games, people with mental health disabilities, and anyone other than himself for the actions that he alone has inspired. Yesterday, he called on all Americans to reject bigotry. But you know the question that's on the mind of most Americans? When will he reject racism and bigotry? It's not surprising, right? This is a president who ran on a campaign of demonizing Muslims, Latinos, and other immigrants. In his inaugural address to our nation, he painted a dark, dark future for our country. He even called it American carnage. And he has called African Americans and where they live disgusting, rat and rodent infested mess. He says that Congresswomen of color hate America and shall go back to where they come from. The president must stop. He must stop with this racist and dehumanizing rhetoric.
That's right.
But we also need others to do more. The Justice Department and the FBI need to step up and meet the urgency of today. This is a time for them to lead by prioritizing the white nationalist threat and giving it the resources it needs. We all know the reality, especially for American Muslims. The reality is that if this was an ISIS or Al-Qaeda threat, and there was somebody who had killed 3 people in Gilroy, and then 6 days later, 22 in El Paso, Texas, we would have already seen decisive action by the DOJ and by the FBI. 4chan and 8chan would have been shut down long ago. And the FBI and the Justice Department instead shamefully sit on their hands. How many more people must die before they finally act and protect us?
Right. Shame on them.
But there's another group of actors who have a role and have a responsibility to lead. It's tech companies. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. They must act with the moral clarity and leadership that this crisis demands.
Right.
White nationalist rhetoric thrives on their platforms and is accelerated by the very sophisticated algorithms that these very companies have created, feeding hate into the minds of people who thrive on this rhetoric. Again, we know that if it was ISIS or Al-Qaeda messages that were on these platforms, tech companies would have acted long ago.
That's right. Speak the truth.
Instead, these companies have profited from hate. It's not just the Trump campaign pumping millions of dollars into companies like Facebook, but even Amazon is helping 8chan profit to be able to fundraise off of their platform. So it's a national disgrace that we have the president, the Republican Party, right-wing media, and even tech companies who've encouraged or tolerated white nationalist threat for too long.
That's right.
I want to lead you with this. You've heard a lot of action items from us so far. I want to lead you with one more. Muslim Advocates is proud to stand with many of our colleagues, including those who are here today, in calling on tech companies to act against hate. And I want to invite you to go to our website where we have an active campaign calling on tech companies to do better, to stand up, and to use this moment to use their moral leadership to stop hate on their platforms. Please go to MuslimAdvocates.org. Together, we will win this fight, but we each have to stand up and act together. Thank you.
Yeah! Shut hate down!
Shut hate down! Shut hate down! Shut hate down! Shut hate down!
Shut hate down!
And I want to say very clearly that when the president tries to disparage a minority, and when he basically sits idly by, as people say, send them back, send her back, he is talking about 132 million of us.
That's right.
He is talking about our families, our neighbors, our loved ones, our friends. Look around. This is America.
Yeah!
When he targeted Latinos by going down to El Paso, the white supremacists, he was very clear what his call to action was. That was to cause maximum harm, because El Paso is the safest city with 85% Latinos. It was clear what he was trying to do. We've heard the dog whistle turn into action, and we will not tolerate this. But when people say, well, my vote doesn't count, you know what I say? That's crap.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, in the halls of Congress, we have the singlest, most diverse Congress in this nation's history. And with that, not only have we passed background checks, but we've passed the DREAM Act.
Right.
We've demonstrated what our values are. And it's through the leadership of these young, brave individuals. When people say democracy doesn't matter, these are the ones that cannot vote. They were hiding in the shadows, and they came front and center and said, this is my country.
Yeah.
And have learned how to navigate the systems of power to make sure that we not only have their back, but that we let them lead. So I want to thank you so much for joining us right now from United We Dream.
Somos juntos, somos más.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sana Abrar, and I represent United We Dream, the nation's largest immigrant youth-led network. But I want to be clear, I don't only represent United We Dream. I represent the little girl who in 7th grade was told to go back to her country. I represent the sisters in Congress who have been shamed, who have been attacked, who have been racially profiled, who have been sent death threats time and time again because they are brave enough to open their mouths and speak the truth.
Right.
And I represent the many generations in this country who are committed to fighting for freedom and making America better. I represent immigrant youth and their families from all across the country, and the times that we are living in are absolutely terrifying. They're terrifying by design. After the El Paso massacre, there were undocumented immigrants who were too afraid to get medical attention for fear of having ICE called on them. We have seen and lived and witnessed the cases of individuals being attacked and dragged out of hospitals by ICE and Border Patrol agents.
Shut down ICE!
There were individuals who were too afraid to go out and find their loved ones, individuals who may have been attacked just because they don't have papers and they're considered less than in this country. This is their heartbreaking reality, and we send our love and support to these families who are living unbearable pain right now, not only in El Paso, but across the country in cities and rural communities all across that have been targeted by raids, by attacks, and the disappearances of our community members. This whole reality is by design. Our government has emboldened and empowered ICE and Border Patrol to detain, to deport, and to kill.
No more.
Our government has also emboldened a man who drove 9 hours with a mission to kill Latinos and immigrants. Our government is amplifying centuries-old white supremacist ideology. They're using language that demonizes immigrants and people of color, and people are becoming radicalized, but the government is refusing to stop it and take action. Who is paying the price? Our communities. We're paying the price for the government's inaction to end gun violence and address deep racial inequality. Immigrants, black, brown, indigenous, Jewish, Muslim, Sikh, queer, students, and low-income communities everywhere are suffering the consequences. We cannot allow this to continue. No more thoughts and prayers. We need change when? Now! Every member of Congress, whether Republican or Democrat, must commit to consider legislation that confronts the epidemic of gun violence. In this moment of pain and fear, we demand bold leadership, no more status quo. We're about going forward. We're about taking 10, 20, billions of steps forward rather than returning to any kind of status quo on any issue, whether that is gun violence prevention or immigration.
Now!
In this moment of pain and fear, we demand bold leadership in all levels of government that brings justice for our communities that find themselves at the deadly crosshairs of white nationalism and gun violence. Immigrant youth of United We Dream will continue to unapologetically organize and mobilize our communities. We know that the power to resist is inside each of us, and the power to win is in our solidarity, the kind of solidarity that you see here today, right in front of that house. We recommit ourselves to one another, and we recommit to dream beyond this moment, because we know that the only way that our communities can live and thrive is to live unafraid of deportation and unafraid of gun violence. We will all fight together, collectively, as a community with love and determination to realize that future. Thank you.
United we dream!
United We Dream!
United we dream! United!
Thank you so much for those powerful words, and I think we must remember that a pock on our house is a pock on everyone's, and what we need to make sure that we're standing firm and strong. And when people tell me that our vote doesn't matter, not only have we passed gun legislation in Congress. Not only have we passed DACA, not only have we passed TPS, but we've also passed fair wages. And it is through the long, hard work of everyone here and the millions of Americans who know that when they participate, the government is ours. That White House is the people's house. That White House is the people's house. The White House is our house. And November is coming. Voto Latino developed VoterPal. We developed it because we recognize that some people are registered, but we have 15 million Latinos who are unregistered. We have 12 million young people who are unregistered. And with you, when you download VoterPal, you can register all of us. So download it now. But I want to thank, in solidarity, SEIU, who has helped us with VoterPal and so much more, because it is the fight that SEIU took to the streets, to the state houses, that now we have a piece of legislation that Mitch McConnell refuses to pass for fair wages. With that, please, Valerie, join us from SEIU.
Thank you. Thank you.
Labor unite!
It's hot out here, right? But I'm hot and all of us are hot by what's going on in this country.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to take this heat and we're going to put it into action. On behalf of the Service Employees International Union's 2 million members, we join in solidarity. I'm humbled and proud to be with this esteemed group of leaders, and most importantly with all of you. Because you will change the tide that this country is going down. In Gilroy, California, an SEIU 5-to-1 member was injured and her 6-year-old son was killed. Her mother, a retired SEIU and 5-to-1 member, was also injured. In El Paso, Texas, our members in Texas work at Del Sol Medical Center and University Medical Center and are doing everything they can to care for their community. Our members in 1199 Ohio, throughout the state, including Dayton, are suffering with the trauma that these attacks cause. This is more than just an analytical or philosophical debate. People are in pain, and we shouldn't have to be getting grief counselors to go into local union offices or into communities. We should be about stopping that man and his hateful allies from doing the things they're doing to this country. Their fear and division, President Trump's fear and division, are spreading hateful talk and policies that fuel violence, plain and simple. That's where it stops. It stops here and it stops now. Not one more. Not one more. Not one more.
Not one more!
Not one more. Once again, Senator McConnell refuses to govern, blocking Senate action even in the midst of this national crisis. The House already took bipartisan action. Let's give credit where credit is due. We have a long way to go, but Mitch McConnell is blocking the legislation that he should be moving. He needs to get out of the way.
Get out the way, Mitch!
This is a moment of moral crisis for this country. This legislation is just the beginning of tackling gun violence and white supremacist violence. But we need to stand together and demand the change that's necessary. If we don't, we will have, like a friend told me, and it'll be continuing instances. A friend was saying that they wanted to take their 7-year-old to get school clothes. This 7-year-old said, I'm afraid to go school shopping. Can we just order it online? That's not the country we want. That's not the country I want for my grandchildren. That's not the country we deserve, and that's not the country that our ancestors fought for. So let's go into action. No retreat, no backing down. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Enough is enough!
Thank you, Valerie.
Enough is enough!
The next person I want to introduce is one of my Wonder Women, who whenever I call for counsel or direction or ideas, not only does she come through, but she has been an incredible fighter across the country for every possible issue. You have such strength, Michelle. But the fact that she represents teachers, that when you have a Parkland killing, their solution is to arm them, that's not okay. Teachers need to teach. They need to make sure they feel safe, and then they make sure that they're preparing the next generation of excellence. So, Michelle Ringett, thank you so much for joining us for me.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I am Michelle Ringett. I am with the American Federation of Teachers, and I am here today on behalf of Randy Weingarten and our 1.7 million members who are teachers. We are guidance counselors. We are the school personnel your kids go to when they need comfort. But we are also nurses. we are healthcare professionals, and we are also public servants. And all of us from throughout our union, their families and their communities have had enough of what's going on.
Thank you.
We have bandaged kids. We have comforted them in their terror. We have treated families and tried to comfort them when they've lost loved ones in our hospitals. There is too much happening. We've been shot at, we've tried to protect children, and we have lost too many children, too many family members, too many human beings in this country because of our unwillingness to address our lax gun laws and to recognize the hate that's fueling it. I have a different message here today because I think we stand with locked arms with all our sisters and brothers here. I'm from the labor movement. You are all my sisters and brothers.
Yeah.
And we are now dealing with the fact that the fish rots at the head. And you know what fish I'm talking about, right? This decay is trickling down into our schools to the youngest among us, and we have seen an uptick in bullying. We have seen racism unleashed in our schools. We have seen children chanting, "Build the wall," or "Send them back." And this is a culture we cannot tolerate, and we must unite and move against right now. We need to fight for our democracy. We need to fight for the values that this country was founded upon and make them realized to the extent they never have been for too many people before. So I say on behalf of AFT and everyone here, like, we are down to win this, and we will win this. So thank you all for turning out in this heat, and I encourage all of you to make this a starting point of renewed commitment so that we own and move this democracy forward so that everyone feels that they have a place within it. Thank you.
I believe that we will win. I believe
that we will win. I believe that we will win. So, I can tell you what cowardly leadership looks like. It is caging innocent children. It is blaming the most vulnerable through the immigrant community. And it is trying to obfuscate and try to create real solutions of law legislation against guns when they try to place it on the arms and the shoulders of the mental health community. That is unacceptable, that is cowardly, that is weak, and that deflects the real terror in this country, which is white supremacy. That puts us, every single person, in danger. If you think that it is not, again, the fact that they went to the safest city in the nation and massacred Latinos, it was sending a message that none of us is safe. And during this time, it is important that we talk about the real issues that this president is causing. He's causing us pain, he's causing us division, but he's also causing us incredible unity. Because we are speaking truth to power, we are elevating what needs to be addressed, and we are talking and calling out a spade as a spade. This is not about video games. This is not about mental illness. This is about a government and a president who is inciting hate to divide us so that he can basically wreak fear. And we're not going to let him win re-election with that. And with that, I want to welcome Jennifer Mathis, the Director of Policy and Legal Advocacy, Beslan Center for Mental Health Law. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. My name is Jennifer Mathis. I'm at the Beslan Center for Mental Health Law. We represent people with mental health disabilities all around the country. And I am here to tell you, from a disability rights perspective, that it is time to move away from the usual efforts to deflect attention away from the real issues we face, from racism, bigotry, and hatred, and away from real gun violence prevention by falsely blaming people with mental health disabilities for all gun violence. We heard from the president that it was mental illness that pulled the trigger, not the guns. We heard him talk about mentally ill monsters and about involuntarily confining people with mental illness. But these shootings were not about mental illness. Hate is not a mental illness. Scapegoating and demonizing people with psychiatric disabilities not only distracts from serious efforts to address gun violence and hatred, it also inflicts serious harm on people with mental health disabilities. The relentless repetition of the false idea that if someone has done something so terrible
that it's hard to conceive of, that they must be mentally ill, that has become so common that it has infected our societal and our political consciousness. But it is wrong. It is unfounded. Less than 5% of gun violence is committed by people with mental illness, and in fact, people with mental illness are far more likely to be the victims of violence than to be the perpetrators. The false association of mental health disabilities and violence conveys to the public that they should fear and hate people with such disabilities, that they should reject them as their neighbors, as their tenants, as their friends, as their co-workers, and as their employees. That is not the kind of society that we want to live in. No. And it does nothing to address gun violence, and nothing to address hatred and bigotry. In fact, it promotes more hatred. It is time to stop reflexively blaming people with mental health disabilities and address the real problems we face. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I remind folks, when people say my vote doesn't matter, not only did we elect the most diverse Congress in November, and yes, I am an open record because I'm very clear what we have to do. November was a dress rehearsal. And in less than 6 months, we've passed comprehensive background checks, DACA, TPS, a fair wage, and the Equality Act. This is what America looks like. And when gun violence tragically kills and slaughters individuals at Pulse nightclub, it reverberated not only through the Latino community and through the transgender community, but through every single American. One of the most tragic pieces of that was a mother supporting her son who had just come out to her, died in the club alongside him. Violence is deadly. Hate is deadly. And we have no space for it here. And thank you so much for joining us today from HRC, the Human Rights Campaign. Ben Needham, Director of Strategic Initiatives. Thank you for being here.
Hello, I'm Ben Needham from the Human Rights Campaign. And on behalf of the Human Rights Campaign, our President Alfonso David, and our 3 million members and supporters, we join our partners demanding action now on common sense gun reform. The mass shootings and gun violence we saw this past weekend in Dayton, Ohio, and El Paso have a direct correlation to the hate and hate speech we see and hear every day from white supremacy. And let us not be mistaken. Donald Trump's racist attacks on Latinx folks, immigrants, communities of color incite violence. His racist attacks only empower those who wish to do us harm. While we mourn the lives lost in Dayton and El Paso, this isn't just about mass shootings. This is about the 40,000 people who lost their lives to gun violence in 2017, and the 100 people who will die today, and the 100 people who will die tomorrow, and the 100 people who will die the day after tomorrow, and the 100 people who will die every single day to gun violence if we do not act now. Good. Got lost here. The level of gun violence we experience in America, it is not normal. And it's especially destructive to marginalized communities, including people of color, LGBTQ people, women, persons with disabilities, and religious minorities. We thank Speaker Pelosi and the House for moving H.R. 8, a bipartisan background checks bill. And we need this White House, Mitch McConnell, and the Senate to address this epidemic of violence with passing H.R. 8 and signing it into law, along with other common sense gun reform, or stand aside and let lawmakers who can. We stand with our coalition partners today. We are calling for common sense gun reform. We're calling on the Senate to do their job. We're calling on the President to do his job. And if they do not do their job, we will vote them out. If they do not do their jobs, what will we do? What will we do? What will we do? Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to have us joined by Rabbi Moline. He is a rabbi that will lead us into a moment of silence because sometimes we need a little bit of resetting. Thank you so much for being with us. I know that you've been jumping around, but more importantly, this moment to give us peace, but also in solidarity for those individuals that have been killed because of mass shootings, and in particular to the El Paso massacre victims. Thank you.
I am happy to be here with you, even in a suit. We want to take a moment of silence now, and I'm going to ask you to focus on something very specific. Doesn't matter if you have a particular faith or you don't profess a faith, if you have a particular philosophy or you're finding your way. I don't want you to think about numbers. I don't want you to think about cities. I don't want you to think about communities. I want you to think about that one person who has been a victim of white supremacy and hatred and gun violence, who is most like you. You may not know his or her name. You may not have any connection to that person. But that person has lost a life prematurely. And you, because you occupy so much of the same space, you have to find a way to live your life with that extra intensity to make up for the innocent life that's been lost.
Right.
Let's take a moment just to be quiet.
I'm always just amazed when the Trump supporters, they'll say how, oh, that's just so racist. Yeah, that is so completely racist. The racist that Donald Trump is the racist you are, Trump supporter.
It's too warm to go much longer. So let me leave you with this. Now that you've had this moment of silence, I hope you got it out of your system. Make a lot of noise.
I want to thank everyone for joining us and gathering us now. The idea was to channel our anger, but also to be in unity. But this is not over. So I would like to welcome Emma Einhorn from the Campaign of...